What is the dominant language of power that Nuer women have used for generations to shape the behavior of the menfolk around them? Welcome to this adventure into the cultural history of the Nuer people of South Sudan, Neitinab. I'm Nyarial, or Sharon Hutchinson, your host. Well, the answer is not cattle wealth. Among men, of course, access to and control over cattle wealth is the dominant language of power and authority, and indeed fatherhood. But for women it was different, and is different. For example, a woman doesn't need cattle to procreate. Without cattle, a man will never acquire children to carry on his name and line, no matter how many women he impregnates. But a woman is not an issue. Every child that a woman bears, she is the mother, no questions asked. And it really doesn't matter if the men are still arguing amongst themselves with all their cattle talk about who is going to have final paternity rights in that child. It doesn't matter. So where did women's social power lie? I'm here to tell you that it had a lot to do with food, okay? You see, in Nuer society, at least up until massive displacement of people into refugee camps in the countryside, over all these decades, women were the ones who determined how much and when their husbands ate. Nearly all the food that was destined for men's stomach first passed through the hands of women. And we're talking milk, porridge, cooked meat, even water. So because women had some real control over what their husbands, brothers, and sons ate, they were not adverse. They did not hesitate sometimes to express their disapproval of certain behavior of their menfolk through the withholding of food. Now, there were things that sort of worked against this. A man who had many wives, maybe they competed from each other, or maybe men's norms of, we have to share food among men. So if a man lost his supper, he could try to run to the cattle buyer of someone else and get there in time to eat some of his supper. But in reality, this was a big power. For example, I've heard that during the 1940s, there was a huge fight between two Eastern Gajak Sheng, or communities, that had gone on and on until the women of the entire region decided that it was enough. And they collectively refused to cook for their families, their husbands. And that supposedly the feud ended in 2 days' time. Similarly, I remember when I was in Western Nuer, among the Lake Nuer, talking to a young Nuer man who had run off to join a big spear battle that took place without having any idea about who was involved in it, how it started, or anything. So I asked him about this, and I said, and he confessed that his greatest fear, was for his supper. He said something like, well, Nadia, if I hadn't run to join the fight, the porridge might have run short. Oh, I said. And so then I went to his wife and I said, is it your husband said this? Is it so? And she smiled and said, the food of a coward might indeed run short. There was another Eastern Gajak man who wittily summed it all up, and he said, Nyarial, look around you and you will see that the bravest Nuer men are always henpecked husbands. Or as another Nuer man lamented once, food in the hands of women is a very dangerous weapon. Thank you. That's my thought for the day.